You know, it's a good thing that Indiana Jones is bomb-proof because this movie isn't. Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idol, and yes, we're gonna do something I don't get to do enough of on this channel, and that is film reviews, which is funny since that's what I wanted this channel to originally be before culture decided to, be what culture is. But I did see Indiana Jones in the Dial of Destiny, and I'm going to tell you guys all about it. The good, the bad, the ugly. Yes, there's plenty of bad and ugly, but there's a smidgen of good, and I'm going to be honest about that. Just want to let you guys know this is a spoiler review, so if you don't want spoilers, by all means, probably should come back in a day or two after you've seen it, but I will let you know, probably best to just watch my review when you then can make the decision, yeah, you don't want to see this movie, because if you're an Indiana Jones fan, you're probably not going to want to see this movie. That being said, let's get into it. It actually starts off decent. It truly does. The first 10 or 15 minutes are interesting to say the least. We have a de-aged Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones captured by Nazis, and the de-aging actually looks pretty good, especially when you're just looking straight on his face or maybe a profile shot. It looks very convincing. You can tell it's CGI, but definitely more convincing than Tarkin was back in Rogue One. And yeah, I was like, okay, I kind of get into this. Then they start moving excessively. Action scenes are happening. There's a lot of running. And it starts to kind of wear off, like, oh no, okay, these guys are not quite like Jim Carrey's The Mask, but you can tell we ain't quite perfected it yet. But that being said, it's not just the de-aging, it's a myriad of CGI going on in these action sequences, and that, I think, is what makes this not quite an Indiana Jones movie. When you watch the original trilogy, they are known for their practical effects. They are brilliant practical effects, and for this movie, they said, to hell with doing things that, actually work. Let's just make 85% of it CGI, and that is the route they went, and it is just abrasive to say the least. You know how this is not an Indiana Jones movie? It feels like it wants to be an Indiana Jones movie in the same way that Uncharted, the video game series, was inspired by Indiana Jones. It harkens back to Indiana Jones, but it's not Indiana Jones. It's Uncharted. That's what this feels like. Something that wants to be Indiana Jones, but isn't quite it. So while I was kind of enjoying the first 10 to 15 minutes, something was still off, whether it be the uncanny valley effect of the de-aging, whether it be the multitude of CGI, or whether it be, I kid you not, someone standing on top of a speeding train, getting jacked by a piece of metal, and then surviving. Like, okay, hold on a sec. I've seen plenty of Indiana Jones before, and yes, while there are some very, they survived that moments, not this one. Oh my god, how did this dude survive that and not have a scratch on him? I'm sorry, I couldn't suspend my disbelief enough for that one. But the movie does stop being somewhat good 10 to 15 minutes in and cuts to the modern day, where we see Indiana Jones as a teacher, teaching where we've always seen him teach, and he's actually retiring. And I will give credit where credit's due. There's a couple good things about this movie. This is one of them. Harrison Ford. He is doing a fantastic job here. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's kind of sad that with this script, this is what he decided to do a good job with. I truly can't decide if I want to be like, wow, he's really giving it his all, or like, wow, he decided to give his all for this? Like, I don't know which way to go with my appraisal of the situation, but either way, I'm at least happy to see him being passionate. There's a moment where he's teaching a group of kids, and they're just not into it. They're not interested, and as a result, as a teacher, he's not interested. He seems just sort of blasé, and he's just going through the motions, whatever. He's going to retire anyway. Then someone in the back of his class speaks up about history, and you can see the spark in Indy's eyes, and he gets invested. He's so happy to be teaching about Archimedes, and he's starting to get into it, and it's a great moment. You could see that the passion for this particular character has not died in Harrison Ford's eyes, and it truly was brilliant to see. Again, it's just too bad this is not an Indiana Jones movie. It is a Helena Shaw movie. Who is Helena Shaw, might you ask? The character played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who is, the individual that murdered 007 and Star Wars, and will be having her way with the Tomb Raider very soon. You would think a feminist would be very anti-rape, but she sure is raping these legacy IPs. Yes, the individual that was interested in history turned out to be Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, and let's just say that maybe Disney has sort of learned from the past when it comes to Star Wars. She's not a Mary Sue like Rey, but oh my god, is she insufferable. This is one of the most irritating characters I've seen on screen for quite some time. Don't get me wrong, she does occasionally fail and make mistakes, but even when she does, she's proud of herself. Oh, pat me on the back because I'm so great. Yes, I made a mistake, but that's okay. She very much talks herself up. Like, I know she's supposed to have an insufferable personality because it hides a layer of, what is underneath the scared, vulnerable child. but they never actually give you reason to care about that scared, vulnerable child that could be underneath because they're too afraid to show her be weak. So when that moment finally does come near the end of the film and we get to see like what is underneath, it doesn't have any sort of resonance because we haven't slowly chipped away the armor. It's just been walls, walls, walls. Walls are gone. Oh my god, I'm here. I'm a good person on the inside. Well, really, because the last hour and a half of this movie has very much led me to believe you're not a good person on the inside. But I am getting ahead of myself, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the other things the films have done, which is the interactions between Indiana Jones and Helena Shaw. They got no chemistry. Look, I get it. This is not just me hating on Phoebe Waller-Bridge to hate on her. I know it's a very popular thing to do on YouTube, and all I'm saying is that if you're going to have someone come in and usurp the role of Indiana Jones, that person better have chemistry with Harrison Ford. They do not. There's this one scene where they're in a bar and they are talking, and he asked the question, what would you do? Why would you go after something that drove your father crazy? And she said, well, wouldn't you? And it's very much harkening back to The Last Crusade and how Indy took up his father's crusade for the Holy Grail. And I wanted that line to mean something because it is actually pretty well written. I give a Cliff Notes version of it, but yes, they actually do build the moment up, and it's supposed to make you realize, oh, she is sort of similar to Indy in a way that harkens back to the young Indy that we've seen, that we grew up with. They kind of did do some good writing here. I know, shocking that Disney did good writing, but they did. However, because the line is delivered poorly and because there's very obvious no chemistry on screen between these two, it falls flat. The writing is good, but the delivery is just awful. And it sucks because I wanted that sort of line to sort of have an emotional punch to it, and the potential was there, but the execution was all sorts of wrong. But again, she goes back to being a completely insufferable character. She spins Indy a bunch of yarns, gets him caught in a web of lies, leaves him to die, very much intentionally. She does not care if she puts her godfather in harm's way. In fact, her life would be easier if he was dead. And then he is rescued by Sallah. And I was really hoping to have some sort of emotion about, seeing Jonathan Rhys-Davies as Sallah again. And it was almost there. Just like in the beginning of the movie, there's almost some emotional resonance there, especially when Sallah is speaking. Like, there's this moment where you're introduced to his kids and his family, and you see, once again, Harrison Ford do amazing acting. He gets one line towards one of Salah's children, and it's like, wow, these two have been friends for decades. Like, there is a history there. One line from Harrison Ford between him and Sallah, acknowledging Salah's kids when we see them running through the apartment, and it's like, oh my god. But it hurts that we didn't get to see, these guys' history. Yes, I guess Sallah was in the first film and the third film, but beyond that, they talk about this history that they've never really had, that we've seen on screen. Like, it's so painful to know that there are actually really good stories that we hypothetically missed out on, that Harrison is doing a fantastic job acting out as if they actually existed, but we'll never get to see them because we got this instead. Anyway, Indiana Jones travels to Morocco to meet back up with Phoebe Waller-Bridge to get back the Dial of Destiny, which she has stolen from him, and she decides to call him a grave robber. Yes, she takes the man who instilled in all of us, it belongs in a museum, and she calls him a grave robber. She tries to say that he is a monster for what he does and that he pretends to be virtuous. At least she's honest about the fact that she steals this stuff and then sells it on the black market for, auctions and whatnot. Like, yes, she's not one of those. I actually thought going into this that she was going to be somebody who's like, oh, you're so outdated. This belongs in a museum. We need to be giving it back to their indigenous cultures. No. To Disney's credit, she is more or less a bad guy. Like, she is selling these artifacts to the highest bidder on auction, these stolen artifacts. But she then decides to denigrate our hero, the man we grow up with, Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, as just a grave robber from a forgotten time, which is beyond disrespectful. Except for I couldn't even really be upset that she was being disrespectful, because throughout this entire movie, up to this point, I've been bored. There's been glimmers and moments of hope where I was like, oh, this might be going somewhere. Oh, no, it's not. Never mind. Oh, wait, maybe it's going some. No, it's not. And at this point, we're about half an hour into the movie. Like, we're half an hour in, and I'm bored. I've almost not been bored multiple times, thinking, hey, something could come, and then it just doesn't come. Like, it's the ultimate cock tease of a film, except for some people enjoy edging. Edging can be kind of, ooh, it's interesting. Oh, I like how that makes me feel. Why are we going like this? This movie doesn't do that. It's not enjoyable edging. It's boring edging. Anyway, those mental images out of your mind aside, yes, we do get to multiple chase scenes in this film. In fact, during the second chase scene is where I finally stopped being bored. Not because the chase scene was good, but because after the chase scene, we get the most disrespectful line from Phoebe Waller-Bridge to Harrison Ford that I could have possibly imagined. She talked about how he was never there for her, and how he was never good at being a parent, how he was never good at having a family, how he was never good at being a husband. Just says, you've never been good with family. And I got so angry because there it was. While there had been some little hints that Disney was back to their old ways of denigrating our strong male heroes from the past, this line, they were overt about it. They did not give a damn if you loved Indiana Jones growing up. They wanted you to see him for the flawed, awful character from the patriarchal 80s that he was, and they wanted to prop up Phoebe Waller-Bridge as the new, good, modern, feminist hero. You know, doing what she can in a man's world to survive, even if it means doing things illegally. It destroyed not only me to see what was just said about Indiana Jones, but destroyed any shred of respect I could have had for this film. Because up to this point, the acting's been pretty good. It's been, again, aside from Phoebe Waller-Bridge, it's been a pretty weak story, a pretty boring story, but the acting's been pretty good. The score has been pretty good. The premise has been not really hooking me, but also, you know, not the worst premise I've ever heard of. I mean, Crystal Skull does exist, and all in all, I was just, whatever, this movie, what is this movie doing? I got so fuming mad with one line delivery, and from that point on, I don't think a single smile crossed my lips for the remainder of this movie, minus a certain point which we'll get to in a moment. So we're continuing to watch this movie, and it's going, and I decided to just, move the mouse and check how long I've been watching this, and I realized I'm an hour in. There's another hour and 20 minutes left. It was exhausting. I had to put the movie on pause and go make myself some Philly cheesesteak bratwurst because I just couldn't sit there anymore. It was driving me mad. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that it had only been an hour. Like, here I am recording this review almost immediately after watching it. You know, it was 2.5 hour long movie, 2 hours and 20 minutes to be exact. And oh my goodness, did it feel so much longer than that. I feel like I started this movie 4 or 5 hours ago. It is awfully paced. It is slow. It is more than anything boring. The action set pieces, once again, due to the sheer amount of CGI, is just beyond over the top in a way that is not worth investing in the slightest. I could not believe how long this film felt, especially considering there's no reason for an Indiana Jones movie to be 2 hours and 20 minutes. Indiana Jones films are relatively simple films. Artifact. Get the artifact. Stop Nazis from getting said artifact. You don't need to make an almost Lord of the Rings length movie out of that. So eventually Indiana Jones and Helena Shaw, the Phoebe Waller-Bridge character, make it to the island where Archimedes' tomb is supposed to be, and they have to climb up a rock formation. Well, what do you think they use this for? It starts with Indiana Jones leading the climb, and then he sits there and complains about how old he is and how bad he hurts, and then, Helena Shaw decides to say, hey, it's okay, I understand, and he's like, no, you don't, and he continues to moan and cry and wah, 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 and then she starts climbing up above him, and he just goes, yeah, don't worry, I'll catch up with you, you lead. And it cuts. The scene cuts with him saying, you take the lead. If that is not the most overt way for Disney to have told you Indiana Jones is not the main character of this film, then what happens next will. Because when they get to Archimedes' cave, Indy gets shot, alright? He's the one that gets shot, he goes down bleeding, Helena Shaw runs away with their knockoff short round character. Oh yes, by the way, there's a knockoff short round character in this. His name is Teddy. Not only is he a knockoff short round, he even has the same backstory. Indy asks Helena, how'd you meet him? And she talks about how 10 years ago he tried to steal her purse and they've been together ever since. Really? What does that sound like? Indy had his pickpocketed by... His pickpocketed? Yeah, no, his pickpocketed. I said that right. By a short round, and they were together after that. Like, they literally just ripped off Short Round's backstory in a way that was supposed to probably make you guys go, oh, remember Short Round? Except for all it did was infuriate me, because up until that point, all this dude has been is discount Short Round with no explanation of why he is there, of why he even matters to the story. And when they finally give you the explanation, it's literally just to say, hey, you guys, remember Short Round? It's so infuriating, especially when they could have actually got the actor that plays Short Round, who has had a Hollywood resurgence for this film. But no, they didn't do that. That would have been, something that fans want, something that fans would have enjoyed. Then again, considering their treatment of Salah and Marion in this film, maybe I'm pretty glad that Ki-Hye Kwan didn't come back to play Short Round. Anyway, back to what I was saying about Indy getting shot. So Indy gets shot and gets taken away by the Nazis, and guess what? He has to be rescued. At this point, we are at the climax of the film, and the entire climax of the film is Phoebe Waller-Bridge rescuing Indiana Jones. That's right, it's not Indy rescuing her, because it's 2023. We cannot have a man, especially an aging white man, save a young female. No. This isn't, hey guys, this is Indiana Jones. Indy saves Marion. Yes, she's a strong female character. She gets some licks in, but at the end of the day, Indy is the hero. Indy also saves the screaming blonde from Temple of Doom. I never remember her name because, let's be honest, she is the worst female character in the entire Jones mythos. But the point is, he saves her. He doesn't really save the girl from Last Crusade because, well, it turns out she's a Nazi as well. But, you could tell there was some he had some moments where he saved her, and he even tried to save her near the end. But no. Oh, and even in Crystal Skull, there are moments where he saves Marion. This movie is doing things worse than Crystal Skull. I kid you not. Anyway, back to this. No, he has to be saved by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. By the way, up to this point, he's used his whip once in the film. Yes, throughout the entirety of the movie, he uses his whip one time. Guys, what is more iconic when it comes to Indiana Jones than his hat and whip, which he uses one time and goes about half the film without the hat? This is not Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones doesn't whine and cry about his age. He doesn't go around not using his whip. He doesn't fall for dumb tricks by a 20-something, 30-something-year-old goddaughter who was never in the story up till now. Like, it is making a mockery of him step by step. Oh yeah, there's also the scene in the caves where, they get covered with bugs, which you would think, oh, it should be no big deal because we've seen Indy get covered with bugs before. It happened literally in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he just sort of brushes them off. No, in this, he and Phoebe Waller-Bridge scream like little girls, and then when he knocks the spider off his hat, I kid you not, the spider squeaks. Like, they put a rabbit squeaking sound effect in for him messing with the spider. I could be wrong. I don't have a whole lot of experience with arachnids. I mean, my favorite superhero is Spider-Man, but that's about as far as it goes. Do tarantulas squeak, guys? Yeah, all in all, the film ends with them going back to the past, going back to what they think is going to be Nazi Germany during the war, but it ends up being actually ancient Greece, and they meet Archimedes. And honestly, this is where the film went from boring to flat out bad, because had they gone back and used the climax to go back to 1930s war-torn Germany, that could have been interesting. We could have seen some interesting stuff there. But going back to all the way to ancient Greece for 10 minutes, if that, it felt hokey. The main villain death is also not very cool. Indiana Jones has always had fantastic main villain deaths, not just in Raiders of the Lost Ark, but even in Crystal Skull and, of course, Temple of Doom and Last Crusade. I mean, they're always just these glorious final bad guy deaths. And here, the plane crashes. You see his face all scarred up. That's it. It is honestly the most boring anticlimactic main villain death in Indiana Jones history. Indiana says he wants to stay in ancient Greece or Syracuse or whatever, Sicily, and, Phoebe Waller-Bridge says you can't do that, then knocks him out. Full-on punches him, right hook to the jaw, knocks Indy unconscious, and drags him back to modern day, or at least modern day for the film. Indy not only gets saved by Phoebe Waller-Bridge throughout the entire last, third of the film, but then when he decides to make a decision, she tells him, no, you're not good enough to make your own decisions, knocks him out, because yes, this 20-pound soaking wet girl can knock out Indiana goddamn Jones. And the next thing we know, he's waking up in his bed all patched up from his gunshot wound. Now, this is where the movie did one thing I loved. Now, this last 2 minutes did not salvage the film for me, but my God, was it a very good last 2 minutes. You see, up to this point, we find out that Marion and Indy have split up. Which, what does that remind you of? Han and Leia? This movie is full of the exact same things they did to Han and Luke in the sequel trilogy. They just wrapped them into one character due to Indiana Jones. But yes, Marion and Indy have split up, and Indy is an alcoholic now because Mutt, the character played by Shia LaBeouf, their son from the Crystal Skull, died in either Korea or Vietnam. Doesn't say which, but it's in the war, and it would have been one of those two. Apparently, Shia LaBeouf's character enlisted, went to fight, and, well, died, and that tore their family apart. Understandably so. I actually don't mind that sort of dynamic. If they don't just sort of gloss over it like it's no big deal, give it a throwaway line in the middle of the movie and a throwaway line near the end. That being said, when Marion comes back and she sees Indy has returned to his former self after one last adventure, I'm not going to spoil how that reunion goes. It's like the one thing I don't want to spoil, because if you do watch this movie, I think you'll love this scene. But Marion and Indy's reunion is brilliant. I had a big, cheeky smile on my face during that, and I'm absolutely not ashamed to admit that that part of the film made me happy. That is it. It was not worth 2 hours and 20 minutes to get 2 minutes that make me actually happy. But, you know, at least there was something that I can genuinely say was good about this film. Guys, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. It is fitting that these movies are about, you know, Nazis being the bad guys, because this film is a Holocaust. I give it like 6 million dead Jews out of 10. And there's something else I want to share with you. This is Indiana Jones. This is how we should remember Indiana Jones. These are my favorite, my all-time favorite trilogy of movies is the Indiana Jones trilogy. And this is not called Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is called Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is how we need to remember this. Do not go see this movie. Do not financially support this movie. Frankly, I pirated it to give you guys this review. Don't even do that. I'm going to come out and say I do not support piracy of any kind, when really what I'm saying is it's not even worth possibly giving your computer AIDS to watch this film and see how truly bad it is. I do not want anyone subjected to this film, and thank God there is nothing left that I can think of, at least, for Kathleen Kennedy, Lucasfilm, and Disney to ruin. Those are my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on Twitter. You can find me at BoltTheWord. Please do subscribe. I am a nerdy news channel. I do nerdy news every day when I'm not doing something like this, or a review of some kind. And remember, it's all here in the nerdosphere, and this has been Words of Paradise.